Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Show today, as you had me yesterday. You got one more day with me, and I guess maybe two if you count the Saturday morning edition tomorrow, before we take Monday off for Juneteenth and to watch some College World Series, and we'll be back on Tuesday. We've got a full Friday show to bring you first, and I'm super excited to be joined here on another Friday by, yet again, Bill Doleman, the pride of Fairbury, joining us for an entire show. And Bill, it's good to catch up with you yet again, but you're getting tired of us. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I am, and thank you for acknowledging that. If Schmidt, is only going to work part-time, then I think I should get part of his salary at this point. Oh, you're telling me? I would agree. Give me some of that salary too. But I was in this morning on KO4 Mornings, and then I came in here and did the morning hookup this morning as well with Will. And respect for Schmitty goes up after a day like today. I'm sitting in here just trying to bring some energy. I didn't want to drink coffee too late in the day because I got a nap in between the shows, and if I drank coffee before, this is going to be a whole issue tonight, or then it's going to mess up my sleep schedule for the weekend. And I got a busy weekend planned, so got to make it through this show. We got a Saturday morning edition tomorrow, and then a weekend full of baseball umpiring in the 100-degree heat. So I'm going to try to keep cool this weekend and enjoy Monday, as I'll be up at the College World Series. Might try to even make a trip up on Saturday, and that's where we'll start off here, as the first game looked like it may have been a blowout in the College World Series. Oklahoma jumped all over Texas A&M, and I can report to you at this moment we're in the bottom of the seventh inning, and Texas A&M has crawled back. It is 12-8 Oklahoma on top of the Aggies, and this is after I believe Oklahoma jumped on top 12-3. They hit a grand slam, 3 home runs through the first 2 innings for these teams combined, so almost felt like a callback to the old Rosenblatt days with how much the ball was flying out of the park. But we've seen this in recent years as well, Bill, where they flatten the seams in college baseball, and we're starting to get back to some of the Rosenblatt aluminum bat days of home runs flying out of the ballpark. That's not fun. I like offense, but when we had those games where they were 21-14 and 17-13, and nobody was out of it until the very, I just became too much video game baseball for me. So I'm hoping that we don't have games like this be the pattern, that this is more of an irregularity. Give me just good old fashioned 5-2, 7-3s. I'm good with that. But college baseball has been a really good game for the past decade, since they really started to, they calmed down the bat, and with the exposure for television and the baseball and all that kind of stuff, it's made it, to me, a better product than what you see in the majors. Now, is it better baseball? No, but the product, the presentation, and trying to, neutralize things and make it fair. I've enjoyed college baseball probably more in the last 10 years, 5 years, than I have in my entire life. Really? See, maybe it's just one of those things where you look back upon your childhood with fondness, but whenever you see those old College World Series highlights of the ball just pinging off the aluminum bat, it's such a nostalgic sound, and I understand the argument for wanting to make it more like actual baseball as opposed to video game baseball. I get that. The home run numbers were crazy, and that's why they made the switch to the BB Core bats, the two-piece composite bats. But something about the aluminum bats with that ball, it was flying off the bat at like 120 miles an hour, just line drive over the wall at Rosenblatt. That was beautiful. And I mean, when they flipped they flipped the arrangement of Rosenblatt, the wind was headed out, and they flipped it back for TD Ameritrade down Charles Schwab where the wind was blowing in. I felt like it would have been perfect if they would have had the old aluminum bats at TD Ameritrade or Charles Schwab or whatever the heck it's called now. I thought that would have been a lot of fun. I do kind of miss it because, like,
who hates offense in baseball? I understand you want to keep the game short, and you want to keep it more like actual baseball, but especially in the College World Series, let's have some fun. Let's hit some nukes.
It is fun, but you amuse me when you say the nostalgia of the aluminum ping. Nostalgia is the crack of a wooden bat, not the ping of 7. It's like I long for the AstroTurf 70s. That's what it reminds me. I long for when it was concrete and carpeting over the top. Not what it is now. No.
But Bill, you got to remember here.
Dirt, grass, that's baseball. Okay, maybe not metal spikes that are going to sever tendons. Okay, maybe it's safer to not have those. But to long for the nostalgia of the ping is amusing. Let me just say that. But college baseball, those who govern it have done a great job, and I, to a certain extent, that I think ESPN has probably had a lot to do with that. We cannot have 21-14 baseball games fitting into what we hope will be a 2 hour and 45 minute to 3 hour window. Okay, so I'm sure that the powers that be at ESPN went to the NCAA and said, we're going to put more of this on, but the games cannot be 4 hours. It's the same thing with volleyball going to rally scoring throughout, because you couldn't, one of the greatest volleyball matches in the history of Nebraska volleyball and in college volleyball in general was in 1988 when Nebraska, Texas went like 4 hours and 15 minutes in side-out volleyball. Mm-hmm. And that was when ETV was one of the only networks doing volleyball. But they said, look, if we're going to put this in on television other than Nebraska ETV, it's got to fit into a 90-minute to 2 hour window. That's why college basketball works so well. That's why women's college basketball probably gets more airtime than women's volleyball. It fits neatly into a 2 hour window. And I really believe that ESPN went to the NCAA and the college baseball powers and said, look, these games have to try to fit into 3 hours. And do what you got to do to the baseball and to the bats and get it done. And we'll put it on all the time. They've got a great product in Omaha. I mean, it has just worked.
Mm. And it almost feels like they have found a happy medium here in recent years, because they went with the two-piece composite bats, and it felt like there was a real diminishment of power and power hitting and home runs. And then a couple years ago, they went and flattened the seams on the baseballs of NCAA, so the pitches didn't move as much coming through the zone, and the pitches were able to, or the line drives were able to go further out in the outfield because the seams were lower, less drag. And they've kind of found a happy medium. That's evidenced by a guy I'm really excited to see up here in Omaha this week. Melendez from Texas set the record for most home runs in a season since they went to that the BB Core two-piece composite bat. Set the record for that this year and hit, probably the longest home run I have ever seen in a college baseball game in the Super Regional against ECU. It went onto the road well beyond a parking lot in left field, absolutely crushed it. And then he also hit one that was a back knee slider. It was going to hit him if he didn't swing the bat, and he swung the bat and somehow got that thing out of the park. So Melendez is going to be a great watch in Omaha this week, despite the fact that he plays for Texas. But I'll be watching anyway. And a lot of great power hitters. You got that Auburn first baseman who I think could be a fan favorite in Omaha this year because he's built like us. He's got that dad bod rocking, and he hits for power. He's a lot of fun. You got Tim Elko from Ole Miss, another guy who hits for power. I think it's going to be a fun college World Series, I should say, with some power. But Bill, here with this last 7 minutes of this first segment here, let's shift away from college baseball as maybe we'll report a final score to you once that Oklahoma-Texas A&M game does indeed go final. But where I want to go with this is something Schmidt and I discussed on Wednesday, and I want to bring it back up with you, Bill, because you tend to have a good sense of Nebraska's draw and Nebraska's stance within the college football world. And Stuart Mandel, he does this about every single 5 years, and we talked about it on Wednesday, as I said, the Kings and Barons list. Schmidt called it the mob boss list of you got the boss, the underboss, the soldiers, and whatnot. But we talked about on Wednesday, and I want to get Bill's take on this, and I'll just read off some of the teams that are in the different tiers. Bill, is this year you have the Emperor's tier, untouchably dominant. That one is only Alabama in that list, and I think that is 100% fair with the kind of decade, 15 years that Alabama has had since Nick Saban took the helm. Unquestionable that Alabama is untouchably dominant and the emperor of the college football world. Then you move into the Kings, where you find the Clemsons, Georgias, Ohio States, Michigans, Oklahomas, and Notre Dames of the world. A couple dubious inclusions there in Texas and USC, I would say. I think they do have the draw, but their results on the field haven't necessarily been up to snuff with what you'd expect. You move into the next tier after that, the Barons, where you find Nebraska along with schools such as Iowa, Penn State, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Wisconsin, Florida, Auburn, and Florida State, among others. And then you move into the Knights, who Stuart Mandel says are fighting for honor and glory. Those are the Utahs, Ole Miss, Oklahoma States, NC State, North Carolinas of the world, and then the peasants way below that. And I think we can all guess who the peasants of the college football world are. But, Bill, I just want to get your take on this as a whole. What do you make of Nebraska's inclusions within the Barons, just a touch below the Kings, as well as who actually makes it in as a king this year? Texas, USC, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State. When you look at this as a whole, is it fair, based on the results in the field from Nebraska, that even though they have this great fan support, that they are a touch below those teams that are the kings of the college football world right now?
Well, clearly, first of all, this is let's see, what am I going to write about in mid-June? Oh, I'll come up with this, and this will do a little clickbait thing. Secondly, I think Nebraska is strategically placed where it is so that it'll get clicks. I mean, come on. It's going to be who's going to respond to a list like that more than Nebraska fans? So if I put them in the first 10, they'll respond. If I put them in the middle 10, they'll respond and say they should be higher. So this is an off-season, middle of summer clickbait article by Stuart Mandel, and he found a way to label it. Although I like the mafia thing. That was that seemed to be a little bit better terminology. Maybe I'll steal that for something. But all that said, I think he's probably pretty accurate in the majority of the listings that he has, and I will agree with you. I'm not sure that Texas belongs in the, what are they, the Kings or something?
Yes, the Kings.
I'm not quite sure that that's necessarily true, other than they've got more money than most kingdoms. But you know, they've been floundering around ever since Vince Young ran for that touchdown in 2005 against USC in the Rose Bowl. So I'm not quite sure that I'm willing to put them in that top tier, or that tier below Alabama. And USC, let's face it, they're just sexy because they hired Lincoln Riley. I don't know that, you know, that they're not having the run when they were doing all they were doing, writing rules in pencil with Pete Carroll. So that's just because Lincoln Riley is there, and there's really nothing else in the Pac-12. You know, to be honest with you, is there? Washington? No.
Oregon?
Utah? Yeah, okay, maybe Oregon, yeah.
And Oregon finds themselves in the same tier as Nebraska, the Barons.
Right. I find that, you know, Oregon, they've had the turnover they've had at the coaching staff, I just find odd. You know, guys getting out of there, and, you know, I get Manny Diaz going to Miami, but that's just kind of weird when they've got all the money that they have. Now, I think Nebraska is probably where they should be, if you know, this is the be all to end all in that second tier group, given what's transpired over 20 years. And I'm sure you got a lot of clicks from Husker fans, you know, saying I agree or I don't agree and all that. But then this is just the era. If it's all time, Nebraska's in the top 10. But if it's the last 2 decades, okay, I can't really disagree with too much there. But other than Texas and Texas and Lincoln Riley being in that.
Well, do you worry that Nebraska, with a couple more years of ineptitude, could find themselves falling down the college football ladder even more, despite the fan support that there is here in Nebraska, and despite just the history of this program. I mean, it doesn't feel like Nebraska is among the who's who of the college football world anymore, even though you get stories like this where, people want to get some Nebraska clicks on there, and people will say whatever about Nebraska to get the clicks. They know they'll get the clicks, but in the grand scheme of college football, do you worry that Nebraska could keep falling down here in the next couple of years? Yeah,
but I don't think that's going to happen. I think people are going to have their eyes on Nebraska football as long as Scott Frost is the head coach. And if something goes terribly wrong and things get worse than they have the last few years, and instead of losing games by one score, that's losing them, by 4 scores, and then you've got a turnover, there's going to be interest in who the new coach is. And if it's nobody that's all that sexy, then yeah, it probably could happen.
Well, I mean, we've talked about.
I just don't think that's going to happen, though.
We've talked about Nebraska fans tempering expectations in recent years with just the results in the field over the past decade. And if Nebraska becomes one of those teams that has great fan support, but is 8-4, 7-5 every single year with the occasional 11-1 season, is that still among the who's who of college football? I guess that's the question here that I'm trying to wrestle with in my own head.
But remember, we're going to go into a different era of college football. It's different than it was in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, and it's different since the major conference realignment in 2010. And there's going to be another realignment coming up in the next few years. I'm just telling you. And there's going to be probably a college football corporation. So to measure what Nebraska might look like in X amount of years to what the college football landscape is right now. 2 years ago, we're not talking about NIL, and the transfer portal was like, oh, that's probably not going to be that big of a deal. In 2 years, Ryan Day's laying it down that it's going to be $2 million to be the quarterback at Ohio State. Listen to what I'm saying. And I said this last week. He's saying that to be careful, college football, but he's also saying, hey, see what you can make at Ohio State? That's our going rate, right? So there was 2 messages in that one statement. And in a couple of years, Nebraska is willing to be all in on that. And a lot of those schools that are on that list are not. They're not going to throw their chips in. I got one an hour away from me that's not going to put their chips in, right? So when college football goes to the Power 64, or dare I even say 32, Nebraska is still going to matter because Nebraska draws attention, draws eyeballs, and it's important. Nebraska is important to the televised world of college football, and will be that way for decades.
There is Bill Doleman with us here on a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. We'll get caught up with Steve Marik after the break as Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel taking you through this Friday edition.
Calling all Storm Chasers fans. A team you never get to see is making their way to Werner Park June 7th through the 12th, and that's the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs. It's the first meeting between the two franchises, and there's plenty going on that week. June 9th is the Chasers Community Celebration for Pride Night, presented by PayPal. June 10th is What If Night, where the Storm Chasers will change their name to the Hogs. A little backstory, that was a previous Omaha team and was a potential name change when the franchise was looking to rebrand. It's a battle of pigs versus hogs. You can't have a name change without new jerseys too. Specialty jerseys will be worn that night, and of course, they'll be autographed and auctioned off. Snag your favorite player June 10th and then run it back on the 11th. It's Salute to Corn Night, presented by the Nebraska Corn Board. It's a celebration of all things corn. Corn on the jerseys, corn in the stands. Trust me, this game will be amazing. See you there.
And we're back.
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio lesson?
On Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome! It's Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman taking you through a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. We are presented by the Nebraska Lottery. A lot of stuff to get into today as the Warriors NBA Finals champions. We'll get into that here in just a second. And we'll also catch up with Derek Peterson, still doing the Varsity Club podcast, but also working for Saturdays Down South now. So excited to get caught up with Derek. We haven't talked with him in a few months, so it'll be good to chat with him and Also, a quick preview of a big recruiting weekend. That's all still coming your way. But first, let's get caught up with writer for Hail Varsity Magazine, Steve Marik, joining us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Steve, with this heat wave coming in here, I mean, everyone wants to get out and see the College World Series, I think, this summer. But I'm sitting here dubious because I'm looking at ticket prices and I'm looking at the weather forthcoming. And I feel like I'll be melting out in that outfield if I actually do make it out to a game this weekend.
I'm with you, Elijah. I'm going to be watching this great tournament from the comfort of my own home with the air conditioning on, with a cold beverage in hand on my couch. So I'm with you. I'm
going to bring up a topic here that Bill and I did sort of disagree with here in the first segment. Do you miss the aluminum bat era of college baseball? The ping of the bat, the 120 mile an hour exit velocity. Something about that just reminds me of my childhood and those runs Nebraska made to the College World Series. And I love that era, and I kind of wish that they had never gone away from it. And they've made some changes to the game here in recent years to try to get power numbers back up slightly. But Bill doesn't miss that whatsoever. And part of me misses that nostalgia aspect of, man, you're going to see a ball travel 120 miles an hour off the bat today.
Yeah, I think that's actually cool. I'm with you. I enjoy that sound. I grew up with the sound. I played baseball just as a young kid as well, and whenever you hear that, it kind of takes you back. So I'm with you. That's a good call, Elijah. Good job.
No, again, you guys are both wrong. It's like the ping takes me back to childhood, like Budweiser takes me back to high school. That's just not right. Look, I peppered Quinn Field back in Fairbury with numerous hits off of metal bats, but still the crack of the bat is a sound that is sweet in baseball. It's like the swish of the net in basketball, or a good hit in football. The ping. I remember being at a game at Haymarket Park shortly after it opened, and I was doing the Salt Dogs, but it was Nebraska was playing, and I don't know if they were playing like in the afternoon in Nebraska, and the Salt Dogs were in the evening, but I was there, and somebody hits one like a pop-up, and I'm looking at the shortstop to see where the shortstop is going to make the catch, and the ball just continued to carry and carry and carry out to left field for a home run. I thought it was a pop-up to short. And some guy my size, 5'10", 170, launches one over the left field wall. It's a different game with those metal bats and the cheating baseballs and all that. So you guys are both wrong.
Fair enough. I mean,
I see the benefits of both. Let's leave it at that.
I like the fun of aluminum bats, though, and the fun of power hitting. And Steve, that's where we'll go next. This Husker baseball team.
How about that? No. How about this? Before we let's just do this, okay? Let's put everybody who wants to play on steroids and aluminum bats and high seam baseballs in a league of their own.
I'm there.
Just go at it. Let's see how long those games take. Let's see how far they can hit their home runs. I mean, they're making up sports now on ESPN, the Ocho. I'm watching cornhole and axe throwing and drone racing. Let's just have the Cheaters League of Baseball and have at it.
SLB, the Steroid League Baseball. That's great.
Yeah,
Steroid aluminum baseball.
I mean, you get fans in the seats. I can guarantee you that.
People will watch.
People will watch. That is true. And Steve, when we're talking about people wanting to go out and see power hitting, people want to go out and see home runs, that is the way baseball is moving. And that was the way it felt like the Husker baseball team was going to move this year. They hit for power more. You had a lot more guys swinging for the fences, and you saw that didn't quite work out. That's not what Will Bolton knows in terms of his history, both as a player and as a coach. He's been more of a small ball guy, and this year marked a change from that, and we saw the results on the field that came of that. And is there a concerted effort whenever you see the 15 new guys coming in this offseason? Do you see an effort to move back towards keep the Ducks moving, keep them moving down the line? Singles and doubles are what score your runs. Singles, walks, and doubles, I should say, as opposed to the long ball. Is that what the Husker baseball team, in your eyes, will be trying to move back towards next season, or are they going to stick with this theme of trying to find guys that can hit for power?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that Will Bolt at heart, like you said, is kind of a small ball guy, and it's what got them as far as they got a couple seasons ago. And when you look at who they're bringing in, I think it's kind of a mix of guys who are able to do that, plus some guys who have some pretty good power numbers in the junior college ranks. I know Zach Johnson from Southeast Community College, he's a Millard North grad. He's coming to play for the Huskers after a year with the Southeast Community College, and he tied the junior college lead for home runs in a season. So I mean, there's a mix, and I just think that it's something that Will Bolt is going to have to figure out. But just looking at last season and what kind of a disaster it was overall, I think it'd be better just to kind of go back to what got them the success a couple seasons ago. And I think Will Bolt knows that it's hitting for singles, it's stealing bases, it's bunting guys over, keeping the line moving. So we'll see. But if you had to ask me, I think that they're going to try to get back to what they were doing a couple seasons ago, rather than trying to, hit for power like you were talking about this past season.
Steve Marik's with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Steve, as a follow-up to that, next season, if it is different from this year, what do you think is going to be more important in the battle to get this Husker baseball team back into the postseason? Is it going to be changes within the pitching rotation and getting the pitching better, or is it going to be fixing the lineup and getting more hits, more run support for your pitchers?
I feel like it should be the run support part, and just offensively, just scoring more runs and more consistency above anything else. I mean, there were times last year where the offense looked okay and gave the starting pitcher and pitching staff and relievers some run support. Then there were other games where you just couldn't see anything happening offensively, and they would get out of games with 1 or 2 runs, and that's absolutely not enough. So I think just this upcoming season, they need to really focus on the lineup, the offense, being consistent, moving the batting order every single game, because I think I like the arms that they have coming back, some of them coming back, and there's a lot of options, multiple options coming in with these newcomers too in this class. So but yeah, if you're talking about offense or pitching, I'd really kind of focus on the offense and having it be way more consistent than it was last season.
Steve, I just think Nebraska lost its identity after the successes of 2 seasons ago. And I like what you said. Will Bolt knows that. And I'm not going to say that this last year was an experiment, because I'm sure he wanted to win and repeat as Big Ten champions. But I think it was a great learning lesson for him that, we cannot lose, shall we say, and this would be Will Bolt speaking, we cannot lose my identity. His identity is as a scrappy Long Beach State dirtbag. Remember that identity? That's Will Bolt baseball, and Nebraska lost that early last year. And then, granted, they had some injuries on the staff, but when you're looking to have those power hitters, that's pitching versus hitting. When you play the kind of baseball that Will Bolts did 2 years ago, when everybody fell in love with Nebraska baseball, and not just Nebraska fans, but college baseball fans, you put pressure on the pitcher, and it's one against many. When you get a guy on base and he's a threat to steal, or you've got the threat to bunt, that puts pressure on the pitcher. It puts pressure on the infielders. It puts pressure on that defense, and everybody's got to be in tune, and it wears you out as a defense and as a pitcher, as an opposing pitcher. When you're just up there trying to hit that, American League 2-run home run, you've lost your Nebraska baseball identity, and that's what he's got to get back. He's got to get the kind of players who are willing to play the way Will plays and played.
Yeah, Bill, I totally agree with that. That's an excellent point by yourself. And when you're saying that, I kept thinking to myself, like, man, like I think Will kind of realizes the situation, and I think he's the kind of head coach that as we're kind of seeing with this class of over 30 plus guys coming in, I think he's willing to realize the situation and make a change right away, and not kind of wait 1 or 2 multiple seasons and see how it goes. I think he's seeing a problem, he's seeing that there is an issue, and he's doing something about it in the very first off season. And I think that that's really kind of commendable for him. And a good thing for the direction of this program.
Steve, last thought here, about 30 seconds, and I was planning on talking some football here today, but the baseball's been good, and college baseball is on our mind because of the College World Series, so I guess we'll just stick with this baseball theme to close here. At the end of last season, I believe it was Cade Povich was meeting with the media, and he said he thought Will Bolt would be the coach that would get Nebraska back to Omaha, and a lot of Husker fans, a lot of people within the media believe that. Do you think that your confidence in that sentiment there, that Will Bolt will be the guy that will lead Nebraska back to the promised land, do you think that's wavered within the past year for you?
No, it hasn't wavered at all. I really think that, Nebraska has the right guy in charge right now, and I just think that he knows the game, he lives the game, baseball is his life, he's a really bright mind. I just think, he maybe learned some lessons about this past season and is working to correct it right now, and I think that's the best thing that you can ask for a head coach.
There is Steve Marik joining us here on Hail Varsity Radio. You can find him on Twitter at Steve_Marik. And Steve, appreciate your time here on a Friday. If you do make it up to a College World Series game, try to stay cool, all right, bud?
All right, I will. Thank you, Elijah. Thank you, Bill.
Calling all soccer fans. Union Omaha is back home after an unbelievable showing in the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup round of 16. An upset over Minnesota United? That's our team. So join them when they come home May 28th for Educational Outreach Night, presented by Bellevue University. The Owls will face Northern Colorado Hailstorm FC, and after a couple of road matches, will come back on June 18th to face Greenville Triumph SC. It's also Pride Night. We'll see you there.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman taking you through a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio. A big thanks to Steve Marik talking some college baseball, some Husker baseball with us here last segment, and we'll have that posted up shortly here on ESPNLincoln.com. You can also check it out, ESPN Lincoln's Twitter page and the ESPN Lincoln Facebook page. And the whole show will also be posted in podcast form here a little bit later this evening as trying to crown a national champion in college baseball here in the next week or so. In discussions with Schmidt about how we're going to get up to Omaha next week and get a live show up there. We're unsure. We've done a couple at Zipline up there, only a block away from TD Ameritrade for the past couple of years, and now we also have access to the Hail Varsity Club. So we'll keep you updated on where we decide to go. But we've been doing so many shows up there from Omaha the past couple of years that I'm sure we'll be doing another one here this season. And as soon as we know where we'll be doing a show next week, we'll let you know so you can come out and visit us. We'd love to get out and talk with our fans. And guess what? I love those road shows too because Zipline, Hail Varsity, whatever. There's beer on tap while you're doing a show. It's perfect. I mean, what else could you ask for? Baseball, beer, and beautiful women. There's the three best things about Omaha, and they'll be out in full force. All three of those: baseball, beer, and beautiful women.
Well, based on your previous comments of what goes with baseball, like an aluminum bat ping, I would think that you'd be looking for Zima or wine coolers or something.
No. Well, those have been replaced by the seltzers now. The hard seltzers with
okay. Whatever it is, your generation of baseball fan drinks. Guys like me, Bud, beer, of any kind, crack of the bat, real grass, and you can have your pings, Zimas, seltzers, and Astrodome, AstroTurf.
I will say I'm not a big fan of the seltzers, but in the right situation, they can be pretty refreshing. That's all I'll say. And they're low calorie. Like, come on, man. I see what the appeal is. I do. I really do. But Bill, trying to crown a national champion in baseball, and we did also get a champion crowned last night on the hardwood NBA Finals. The Warriors taking down the Celtics in Game 6. Elijah wins the bet against Will Wilson as he took the Celtics last night. That's a hot streak for Elijah. I believe 5 straight victories now for me on these. It wasn't a stake in a beer bet last night technically, but we'll call it a stake in a beer bet. That's 5 straight for Elijah's. The Warriors get it done. Steve Kerr after the game with some high praise for Steph Curry and the impact that he made on the floor this entire series as Steph Curry gets his 4th ring, but this time his first NBA Finals MVP.
None of this happens, and that's not taking anything away from Joe and Peter's ownership, because they're amazing owners, built an incredible organization. Bob Myers, hell of a GM, and, our players. We've had so many great players, but Steph ultimately is, why this run has happened.
We'll get into here in just a second and what this does to Steph Curry's legacy. But let's hear from the man himself, Steph Curry. He was happy with this finals victory and said this one felt a little bit different than the finals of old. Obviously, he had so much help with those previous teams. This year, it was really the Steph Curry show, as Steph was incredible all postseason long, really all season long, and he caps off a season with his 4th ring.
These last 3 years, these last 48 hours, every bit of it has been a emotional roller coaster on and off the floor, and you're carrying all of that on a daily basis to try to realize a dream and a goal like we did tonight. And you get goosebumps just thinking about, all those snapshots and episodes that we went through to get back here, individually, collectively, and that's why I say I think this championship hits different. That's why I had so many emotions and still will, just because of what it took to get back here.
One of the main reasons why this one hit different, when you talk about the trials and tribulations over the last 3 years for this Warriors team, but really a lot of chatter around the NBA world too. I saw a tweet last night where it was a moment on, I think it was ESPN's First Take from a couple of years ago, where they went around the panel and asked, now that Steph has signed a new contract, whenever he signed that 4-year, $215 million extension, the panel was asked, I believe it included Kendrick Perkins, among others on that panel, how many championships will Steph Curry win under this new contract? And everyone said 0. They held up a big old 0 in front of their faces. And Steph last night in the post-game podium, he remembered it. He kept the receipts. He held up the 0 in front of his face as well as he got a crown on this new contract. And he went on in the post-game press conference to say that he heard the chatter around the team the past couple of years, hearing the team that the chatter, he couldn't win a title without Durant. He couldn't win a title without the help that was around him. And Steph went out and did it himself this offseason. Obviously some great pieces on that Warriors team, but Steph is the crown jewel. And he said he took that chatter around the league to heart.
It means we won. It means we took advantage of the opportunity getting back here. And I hear all the conversations. I hear all the chatter. We hear all the chatter. At the end of the day, it's about what we do on the floor. Ain't got to talk about it. Just got to go do it. And this one hits different. This one hits different for sure.
So Steph Curry almost feels like what we saw in the Jordan 30 for 30 doc, The Last Dance, where he took things personally, and even if it wasn't meant to be a personal shot at Michael Jordan, he would take that personally for motivation. It sounds like Steph has done the same. And Bill, I'll pose the question to you. You're a guy who's seen a lot more NBA in your day than I have. I started my NBA career watching when LeBron James was in the league. You had those great San Antonio Spurs teams from the mid-2000s, and then LeBron took over, and it was his show. And now we see Steph Curry taking over. And my question to you is, with another ring, his 4th, which ties him with LeBron James in terms of rings won, I believe. I might need to check my math there, but I believe LeBron has won 4 as well. When you look at that, where do you think Steph Curry ranks among the all-time greats of basketball? Because this was really his crowning season after everyone counted him out. He went and won a title yet again. Can we be talking about Steph Curry in that top 5 range in terms of his impact on the game and what he has done over his NBA career?
I don't know if you'd put him in that top 5 category or top 1 with Michael Jordan, who I think Michael Jordan should occupy maybe the top 3 spots, because Curry's a great shooter and maybe the greatest shooter of all time. You'd have to kind of go back and think Larry Bird was a great shooter.
You could argue greatest point guard of all time.
What's that?
You could argue greatest point guard of all time and how he changed how a point guard plays the game of basketball.
Well, but you can say, and then you get into the Magic thing and the John Stockton thing. I just think, look, Steph Curry is arguably the greatest shooter in NBA history. And there's, again, I think Larry Bird. I'd have to think of some others that would come to mind in that regard.
Reggie Miller.
But yeah, maybe. But is Curry's defense as tenacious and as demanding as Michael Jordan's? I don't think so. So I don't want to. You don't want to say Steph Curry's just a one-hit wonder, because that he does the one thing you're supposed to do in basketball very, very well, and maybe better than anybody, and that's shoot it. But, defensively, and is he a distributor of the basketball? I don't see that. I don't think his leadership is necessarily the same as what you saw from Michael Jordan or Larry Bird, but he's a game changer. There's no question about it. Is he one of the 10 greatest? I could probably say that because of his ability to shoot the basketball. I respect, this championship for the Warriors more so maybe than any of the others that they've won in recent history. Although Milwaukee's last year was pretty respectable because it wasn't that super team thing. It wasn't, all the buds wanted to get together and go on a place and win a championship and then go on their, wherever they wanted to go, like LeBron's championships. And when they had Kevin Durant, that was the super team. And, well, this was more Golden State kind of organic, if you will, even though they brought in Wiggins and not everybody's, growing up through the system. But I think this one, as he was saying in his post-game comments, probably maybe the most satisfying of all, because at this stage of his career, which is 13 seasons now, that this is a very sweet, because this was much more of a Golden State team instead of a, makeshift super team that was, I think has kind of turned people off of the NBA.
Well, we'll talk more NBA Finals here coming up after the break as we wrap up Hour 1 here on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Wrapping up the first hour here of Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. It's Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman. You can connect with us on Twitter. It's a great way to reach out if you want to get connected with the show today. At Herbal Essences on Twitter for myself, Elijah Herbel, and at Bill Doleman on Twitter for the man, I would say sitting next to me, virtually sitting next to me, but joining us here from Denver, Bill Doleman. That's where you find him on Twitter. And before we wrap up here this hour, just some few more quick thoughts from the NBA Finals last night, as we gave you the Warriors side of things. Let's quickly get into the Celtics, as Coach Ime Udoka met with the media following the disappointing loss last night, and he doesn't sound like he is completely discouraged by the results of the finals, as you're still as a young team. Obviously, Jason Tatum, only 24 years old, and with all his career accolades, I mean, he sits above guys like LeBron James and Steph Curry based on age, based on how many postseason wins they have and postseason performance. So, though it wasn't a postseason, or I should say a finals to remember from Jason Tatum, still a long career ahead of him, and Coach Ime Udoka really echoed those sentiments last night as well.
What I did say to the group was there are levels, and you can see the difference in Golden State and the team that's been there and been together for a long time. Some of those guys' core group has been 10 years now. So, we've seen what we can achieve. It hurts that we fell short of that. But, what I did say was the future is bright, and we're just getting started. So let's all come back better from this experience.
And this is kind of the power vacuum era where we're going to be entering here into the NBA with guys like LeBron James soon to be out of the league, guys like Steph Curry really are even aging as well. You look at the Paul Georges of the world, where there is a new young core of NBA stars that are waiting to take over. When you look at guys like Luka Doncic, Trae Young, even Nikola Jokic, Jason Tatum, I mean, Ja Morant. There's stars abounding, young stars, young talent that are ready to take the league by storm. But I think last night was an indication that these vets, this old guard, isn't ready to pass the torch over just yet. I mean, we're only 2 years removed from LeBron James winning a title. Steph Curry wins a title last year, and there's still talent among the old guard. And just because you have guys that are young and taking over the game, it doesn't mean they're ready to take over. I guess they're taking over where the game is headed, but they haven't taken over the game completely yet. And I think last night was an indication of that the vets still have something left in the tank, Bill.
One of the things that I learned when I was working in the NBA, it's been several years now, but you still have to know how to play in the NBA. Mm-hmm. You just can't go into the NBA because you're a great basketball player and then you're going to make it in the NBA. There were plenty of times when I would watch warm-ups and whatnot, and you'd have an assistant coach who was assigned to that prize first-round draft pick who was 19 years old, who just didn't understand how to play the game. And, you almost felt sorry for the assistant coach who was assigned to babysit and go through NBA 101 with this guy on a nightly basis. And you felt sorry for the kid who probably would have been a college basketball star for a year or two and then would have been more seasoned for the NBA, but that's why you see so many guys who are still 37, 38, 39, who are older, just rugged, and they're still in there because they know how to play a schedule like that. And that's why guys like Curry and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson will last a long time, is they just understand how to play that business of basketball.
Well, Warriors get the title last night, and that concludes a fun NBA season. It was fun to follow here, and now we eagerly wait the start of a new season of NBA, new season of football. It's all upcoming, and we'll have Derek Peterson upcoming on the show. That's coming up after the break here on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
We're into hour 2 here on Hail Varsity Radio. No Chris Schmidt, but it is Elijah Herbel. Around the state. Can check that out at ESPNLincoln.com or wherever you like to get the Hail Varsity Radio podcast. A fun hour 1 as we talked some NBA Finals here before the break, and before that we talked with Steve Marik, Hail Varsity Magazine. It's fun to talk some college baseball with Steve. We roll into hour 2, and we're excited to welcome back to Hail Varsity Radio Derek Peterson. It's been a few months since we've chatted with Derek. He's been working on the new gig down, I believe it's Saturdays Down South, and he also has his Hail Varsity Club podcast. And Derek, it's been a while. I just want to start this off here by really confusing the hell out of Bill and saying what a great early summer signing window it's been for Antonio Conte and Tottenham Hotspur.
Oh, it's been so good. I will always have a soft spot for Christian Eriksen for the rest of my life. Also, I think Pau Torres is an absolutely incredible halfback, and if we can find a way to get him onto the team, I will. The amount of goodwill that Conte has created is just insane. It's just remarkable to think about.
Oh yeah, you're 100% right. Bill Doleman has given me the glazed over look. He has no idea what we're talking about. That was the goal there, as Derek and I.
You win.
Yeah, Derek and I both some in pain Tottenham Hotspur fans after watching the past couple of seasons, but hope abounds at Hotspur Way. We'll see how that goes this year.
Hey, it's not like I haven't heard these conversations before. Let me just drop something on the floor here for you. When I was at NBC headquarters doing my thing, you got the Premier League show, and
yep.
you'd have the whole gang together, and they'd be in the commissary doing their thing and talking their thing, and all my producers and people around me, they're talking the same stuff and making sure that you say Tottenham right and Premier League and all of this stuff. So I've been around it before. So, and I tuned it out then too. But anyway.
Oh, well,
I don't blame you. It's always been bad as a Tottenham Hotspur fan.
That it has. It ever dating back to the preseason whenever they had Ted Lasso come in and be the coach before the Ted Lasso show. I kid, obviously, whenever they had that commercial out there. That was legendary stuff. We gotta love the Ted Lasso show. But let's get back on topic here. Derek, it's been a while since we've last chatted with you. I know you've been working on that new gig. Tell us a little bit about what you've been working on, how life's been, and what you're up to.
I'm good. My routine is pretty solidified now. It's kind of I cover the Pac-12 for Saturday Out West, which is a new site sort of under the umbrella of Saturday Down South, sister site. So I'm the site lead for Pac-12 coverage. And it's nice because I am in Chicago, obviously, which is 2 hours ahead of, stuff out on the West Coast. So my day starts a little bit later than normal. So I can go to the gym in the morning before getting started on my day, and I don't have to get up and go at 5 a.m. It's pretty nice. But I'm enjoying it. It's I got to give a big shout out to Lincoln Riley for making USC a little bit more relevant again, just in time. But it's fun. It's definitely interesting to go from covering just one team to covering 12. So that's been quite the adjustment.
Well, Derek, the thing is you get to wake up early and go to the gym now, but come fall, you're going to have to be staying up late for Pac-12 After Dark, those late-night Pac-12 games on ESPN.
I can't wait. There's a handful of teams that maybe won't be any good, but I'm really excited to watch. Also, I think it's super cool. That's I'm sort of going through rosters and creating my making some in-season resources for myself and just going through scholarship distribution charts and things like that. And it's cool to see all the former Nebraska players from my time covering Nebraska that are now kind of littered through the Pac-12. I'm very excited to get to watch Taishan Wilson hopefully have a healthy season with Oregon State. He should be, if he's healthy, he should have a pretty substantial role within that offense. And I got a soft spot for Taishan Wilson, man. I'm excited to watch him go.
Well, Derek, you're the perfect person that I want to talk to for what we've been getting into here today. And we've been talking about Stuart Mandel's Kings and Barons list that he released in The Athletic earlier this week. And he ranks, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but he ranks all the college football programs based on if it was a medieval era where you have your kings to your barons to your knights all the way down to your peasants. And Nebraska, for the second straight iteration, finds themselves within the barons, just below, a step below the kings, which would be the Ohio States, the Georgias, the LSUs, the Notre Dames, the Oklahomas of the world. And you being a guy that's been around Nebraska, but also in recent months has kind of taken a step back away from the program, do you think that's a fair estimation of where Nebraska is in the college football world? We know Nebraska draws the eyes, they draw the fan support, but the results on the field haven't been there. And I think some older fans might want to see Huskers in the Kings list because of the history and because of the fan support, but I think the results in the field drag them down. Do you think the Barons list is a good place for Nebraska to be?
Yeah, I would agree with you that just in terms of brand power and historical significance and really just overall significance within the sort of greater college football landscape, you could make the case that Nebraska should be in the Kings. I remember I read this same story. I remember reading it and seeing Nebraska and I was like, okay, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I think it just kind of goes to show the power that this program still has, the power, Frost talked a ton when he first got here about the power of the N when they're out on the recruiting trail and things like that. And I think, even for the most pessimistic viewers of Nebraska football, this offseason, you really can't look at it and say anything other than, well, Nebraska still has power as a college football blue blood, as a brand. The transfers that they've been able to secure, bring into the fold. They pulled a Power 5 quarterback from Texas, which is a big deal. They pulled a Power 5 edge rusher, defensive lineman, whatever you want to call him, from TCU, who everybody in the country wanted. It was a big deal. They got one of the best offensive coordinators in college football last year, or I should say the most successful offensive coordinators in college football last year, to come join Scott Frost's assistant coaching staff. So if you're looking at that list and thinking, this is a ranking of successful on-field programs in the last however many years, you probably came away being why is Nebraska so high? But for what it is, which is how much power does this program have? I think Nebraska was pretty appropriately slotted.
Derek, I was a little amused that you just a few moments ago when you said, the games that you'll be watching late at night, don't know who they will be, but at least some game will be on. And it kind of struck me as the Pac-12 football after dark is basically the old WAC or Hawaii. It's that game that's on because you want to have a game on at 11 or 12 o'clock at night so you can still watch college football, but you really don't know who they are, why they are, if they're any good. It's just football that's out there. Oh, and USC, who played earlier in the day. I mean, that's really kind of what the Pac-12 is to the rest of the country. It's relevant because it's on. Not USC, not Lincoln Riley U, but everybody else, for the most part, we watch Pac-12 football because it's on, right? So what's going to happen when USC bolts the Pac-12, as was rumored about 2 weeks ago, that when everything shakes out, will USC still stay in the Pac-12?
I saw some reporting from John Wilner that while that was discussed, and John Wilner is like the big guy in Pac-12 media circles, while that was discussed, and that's certainly a thing that people have talked about, he doesn't expect that to happen. I mean, like, the Pac-12 is definitely, talk about power of the various Autonomy 5, Power 5 conferences. Like, the Pac-12 is definitely at the bottom of the totem pole, and a big part of that is the fact that, outside of USC and Oregon, like, you're only watching teams if you are up at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night because that's when they're playing. But also, the previous Pac-12 commissioner was very bad at his job, very, very bad at his job. So the next, like, the media rights negotiation, this next round of media rights negotiations is kind of going on all throughout the country. Big Ten is taking part in it now. It's going to be really, really crucial for not just the Pac-12, but like the sort of the long-term viability of the non-SEC power conferences, because like if they're not able to secure deals that are anywhere close to what the SEC is getting, like the SEC is just going to continue to further the gap between it and everything else. And then, there's going to come a point. I feel like I feel like it's an inevitable end game here. There's going to become a point where we get sort of like a college football version of the NFL, where you have like this 30 team, however big the league is, that's the best teams in the sport, and then some kind of amalgamation of everybody else. And so, like, I kind of think that this next round of media negotiation that we're kind of going into, the Pac-12 has to figure out its media rights deal. The Big Ten is doing the same thing. Is going to, I feel like, probably determine like how quickly that point off in the future arrives.
Talking with Derek Peterson here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Derek, I mean, one of the things... Go for it, Bill. Go for it.
Clearly, Derek listens to Hail Varsity Radio Friday afternoons at 5 o'clock Central Time. So I just want to thank him for that.
Bill's been saying this for months, Derek.
I've been saying this since 2004.
Yeah. Yes. I don't think it's like fear-mongering or anything like that. I think that
great minds think alike. But hey, you're right, too. If people want to get a good sense of what could happen, John Wilner of he used to be at the San Jose Mercury News. I mean, he may have gone off and is doing his own thing. But that's another guy that people should tap into in terms of where college football is going, especially when it comes to the media rights. And I don't say that flippantly. I'm not a big booster of media people, but you have to follow the TV dollars. And that guy's been doing it for a long time.
Yep.
Derek, just to kind of tie these two topics together here, and I'm not sure what your schedule looks like, but we're already coming up against a break here, so I might have to ask you to stay another segment if you're available. Just throw that around the mind for a second here while I answer this question. If we do move to this NFL-type system, 32 teams, even say 24 teams, I mean, whatever the number is, as it stands right now, I mean, talking about Nebraska's relevancy in the college football scene, does Nebraska make it into that league?
Yes. I mean, is Nebraska, if it's 32 teams, that's the top half of Power 5 programs. Does Nebraska belong in the top half of Power 5 programs? Yes. Just in terms, Nebraska's going to open its season in Ireland. What percentage of that stadium is going to be red? Like 60, 70, 80%, something rather large. Like Nebraska, in terms of the fan base, in terms of the brand power, in terms of the money that it draws and the eyeballs that it draws, absolutely. And that's going to be the determining factor in something like that. Like, I personally want a system of promotion and relegation in college football. I want it badly. I'm with Bill Connolly on that. I love it in European soccer. I want it for college football. I know that logistically it'd be kind of tough, but maybe we get a situation like that with this sort of super league hypothetically that we're talking about. But Nebraska would absolutely be in it to start. I would be shocked if Nebraska was not a team just based on what we talked about, like brand power, their financial stability, the support for the program, the visibility of the program. Yeah, absolutely.
Derek, the way I see it, the way I think would be awesome is you have like a Champions League system where you qualify for this Super League based on what you do in your conference the year before. And that obviously that would have a lot of logistics to iron out as well. But I think that'd be really cool is your performance in 1 year determines whether you make it into the Super League in the next year. And Super League performance also determines whether you make it back. I think that'd be awesome. And I guess that was kind of played around with European soccer whenever they almost went to their Super League thing a couple years ago, and how do you determine who qualifies for it? But I digress. Derek, we're up against a break here. Would you mind giving us 5 minutes on the other side? I have a question for you that Bill and I discussed before the show. I texted you about it. I want to get into that, so if you can hold 5 minutes, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll have 5 more minutes on the other side with Derek Peterson. As awesome to get caught back up with Derek here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
And we're back.
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio lesson?
On Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
It's Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman taking you through a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio, and we're lucky to get another segment here with Derek Peterson, as Derek doing great work covering the Pac-12 for the Saturdays Down South site, Saturdays Out West, which as a name really just it makes sense. I should have seen that one coming whenever I introduced Derek here at the beginning of this hour. And Derek, good stuff back in that first segment, and it's so good that we didn't even get to what I really brought you on to talk here about, because I've gotten some people that want to disagree with me here, typically people of Bill Doleman's age and up, the people who were here watching Nebraska in the 90s. Chris Schmidt's included in that, where I mentioned the fact that, as we were discussing earlier this week, Nebraska is a team in the college football world that is trying to change what their reputation is, at least their reputation over the past 10 years. And I said essentially Nebraska has been a team of very talented losers. And I don't mean losers in the sense of, well, like these guys suck, or you know what I mean? Like these are bad people, they're losers. It's like they're very talented, but they just find a way to lose football games. And the example I brought up of a team that Nebraska could try to emulate in terms of not having a great recruiting base within their 500-mile radius. They got to turn to places like the transfer portal, and they got to get creative to find players, and they've made their hay with a strong running game, and it's a team that we've gotten a chance to see a lot whenever there's nothing else on at 11:30 p.m. on a Saturday. It's the Utah Utes. They've had a resurgence over the past couple years. A quarterback that protects the ball, doesn't wow you with his play on the field, but he's good at leading a football team, and they surround him with good talent. They've acquired both through smart recruiting decisions and smart decisions in the transfer portal. And I think if Nebraska wants to get back to a place of relevancy within the college football world on the field and out of this persona they've developed for themselves of being a team of talented guys that come off the bus and scare you but can't get the job done, is Utah a program that you think could be emulated by Nebraska in order to get back to the place where Husker fans want to see this team?
Yes, but it's not. It wouldn't be emulating Utah. So Kyle Whittingham, the head coach for the Utes, has been the head coach for the Utes for 18 years. Behind Kirk Ferentz, he's the second longest tenured college football head coach.
Okay.
His defensive coordinator, Morgan Scaley, has been an assistant at Utah for 15 years. Their offensive coordinator, Andy Ludwig, is going into his fourth year, but it's his second stint with the program, and he was with the team during its undefeated season in 2008. Utah's whole thing is continuity. Utah's whole thing is consistency. Utah's been one of the most consistent programs over the last 2 decades, in part because of Kyle Whittingham, but also because there is this established culture there, and there is this you know what you're going to get from a Utah team in a sense of they're going to outmuscle you. They're going to be very physical. They're going to play really good defense. And they're going to run the ball right at you. They had a three-headed running back attack last year that produced over 2,000 rushing yards, and the lead guy in that attack had an FBS leading 21 rushing touchdowns. And they have a quarterback who I really like, who I think can be a Heisman guy, but he's not like a Caleb Williams type. He's a guy that can hurt defenses with his legs, but he just plays really smart football. They operate really efficiently. That model of football is not specific to Utah, even though it is Utah right now. As I'm describing that model of football, I'm thinking about Nebraska, like pre-2000s Nebraska. One of the things that I talked a bunch about whenever I was advocating for Scott Frost to get another year was continuity. It matters. When you're trying to build team culture, when you're trying to build a program, continuity matters. Having the same ideas, the same kind of messaging, this is what we're going to be about, these are the things that we're going to focus on, these are non-negotiables, things like that. That stuff matters. Consistency matters. And who's going to be the more consistent team on Saturdays? Well, that team's probably going to win more often than not. And so, like, could Nebraska try to emulate Utah? Sure, but I don't think they would be trying to emulate Utah. They would just be, a lot of people are going to laugh. They'd just be trying to get back to the 90s Nebraska, which isn't a bad thing. People, laugh at that thought or say, Nebraska fans are stuck in the past. Well, I mean, that will work. We've seen it work. It works with Wisconsin now. So, I mean, I think it's a good example of a team that there's no reason Nebraska can't be like that. There's none. Utah's been really good at developing talent, and they don't recruit super well. They've started to in recent years because of the success that they've had. But they just are really good developers of talent. And Nebraska can be successful recruiting. We have seen that. We know that. Nebraska is a national brand. It can be successful recruiting. Nebraska just needs that consistency component, and it needs to develop talent, which, evidenced by this past NFL draft, this coaching staff can do. So, I think maybe don't try to emulate Utah. Maybe try to emulate what was good in the past, which is going to cause a lot of people to laugh at Nebraska, but that's the way to do it. That's the way to have a successful program.
That's exactly what when Elijah was giving his wrongfully thought out dissertation. I'm thinking Nebraska just needs to emulate Nebraska, and I can remember when Utah was in the Mountain West Conference and we're going through this the seismic shift and conference realignment. I worked with people who went to Utah, big Utah fans, and we were talking about Utah making that move from the Mountain West to the Pac-12. And I said, the thing that Utah needs more than anything is just a total buy-in by the fans, by the administration, by businesses to invest in their stadium, into their culture, into their recruiting, and to operate in a way that they want to be one of the big boys. Nebraska has done that. Utah sort of emulated Nebraska. I'm not going to say they did. But the other team that went into the Pac-12 at the same time, Colorado, did not. They did not go. They just lived on, well, we had a great early 1990s, and we got mountains and weed. You know, they did not push in like Utah's like, we're going to be competitive. And the rest of the Pac-12 was like, we weren't ready for that. And they were serious about it. And Kyle Whittingham, you know, Derek, you talk about the continuity. Kyle Whittingham, I can remember, was always up for every job every year. And then all of a sudden, much like Tom Osborne in the late 80s and 90s, all of a sudden the name doesn't come up anymore because it's like, well, he's not going to leave. Tom wasn't going to leave Nebraska. Yeah. Kyle Whittingham's name doesn't come up for jobs anymore. Kirk Ferentz at Iowa used to be the hot name. That doesn't come up anymore either. So that continuity is absolutely 100% correct. But Utah decided when they went to the Pac-12, we're going to be all in. And it's paid off for them. And they're still okay, I believe, with 8 wins, 9 wins. You know, that's a good season for them. If they win the Pac-12, great. But we can still, you know, be happy with 8 wins in the Pac-12. Nebraska still thinks we should win national championships, and that's a good mentality to have too.
Yeah, I mean, Utah had a 3-2 season during the COVID year. Not a great season by any stretch of the imagination. The juxtaposition between the way Utah entered the Pac-12 and the way Colorado entered it, I think, is a really good point, because you're right. Utah has invested a ton into its program and making sure that, okay, we're in a Power 5 conference now. We want to be taken seriously, so we need to, up the ante, so to speak. And I think Nebraska has done the same kind of thing. They paid for Scott Frost. They have paid to keep a guy like Eric Chenander. Trev Alberts has come in and he's been fiscally responsible, but they have this massive new facility coming that's going to be a big, big deal for Nebraska. Like, if they win 6 or 7 games, you can start selling that facility. That's going to be a very, very big deal. So I would agree with I would agree with you, Bill. That was good.
It's Derek Peterson with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Derek, appreciate you taking some extra time. Last thought before we get you out of here today. I mean, I know Stanford is the Pac-12 school that's in the College World Series this year. Is that the team you're hopping on the bandwagon, or who's your team this year in Omaha?
Oh, I have no idea.
No idea.
I will go to baseball games and kind of enjoy myself, but unless I'm driving home, I'm not. I didn't really even watch the NBA Finals, which is weird. I've been kind of checked out. I'm so ready for college football season. I don't think I've ever been this excited for a college football season for a litany of reasons in a while. So I can't answer that question.
Well,
sorry,
man, it's okay. I just thought that'd be a good question with Oklahoma in the field and you got Stanford in the field. I thought Derek would have strong opinions. It's all right. It's all good. You get a little distance from Omaha, and it's all right. Derek, enjoy the rest of your weekend. It was great getting caught up with you, and have yourself a lovely. I hope we should talk at least at some point here before the start of college football season. But until we meet again, you have yourself a good time and have fun covering the Pac-12. All right, bud?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate talking to you.
See you, Derek.
Derek Peterson joining us today on Hail Varsity Radio, as we've got Ryan Swanigan just checked into the studio. He is getting all set for Salt Dogs baseball coming up tonight. For our local listeners here on ESPN Lincoln, the Salt Dogs taking on the Winnipeg Goldeyes. First pitch coming up a little bit after 6:30. So right here following Hail Varsity Radio, we'll be getting into Salt Dogs baseball coverage. And if you're listening across the state and you want to check in for the Salt Dogs, check them out, ESPNLincoln.com. And Bill, I'll concede the point. I was wrong on Utah. You guys both made good points, and I'll change my tune.
Hey, look, I got a lot of respect for Utah. I covered them a lot when they were in the Mountain West, and that's where I worked and was around Kyle Whittingham and could see how they were working their operation. And for me, I look at everything through Nebraska colored glasses and always will. And I could see Kyle and the way they were developing that program. It was not at Nebraska's level, and it's still, in my opinion, not at Nebraska's level. But I remember talking to, the people that I work with and the people in the conference saying they've got to invest. They just can't accept the invitation. They need to understand that this is a big business move. This isn't just a college football. Now, I will say this. They put everything into football, which is what you have to do. But their basketball program, which was, a darling when Rick Majerus was there. It was a staple on ESPN Big Monday programming back in the 1990s. That program has not recovered, and they really have not put a lot into it. Although the former Nebraska assistant is now the head coach there, Craig Schmidt. So that's great. But Utah has decided we got to be great in football, and everything else has kind of trailed along. But they did what they had to do to be relevant in the Pac-12, and that was to be good to great in football. And congratulations to them and to Kyle Whittingham. Their biggest recruiting thing is they got to recruit against BYU because of the church. And they also recruit because, look, they've got all these metropolitan areas in the Pac-12. It's a different lifestyle, even though they had some tragedies in Salt Lake City last year. But they recruit lifestyle. It's different from LA and San Francisco and all of that. And they've been very, very smart in their Pac-12 membership.
It's Bill Doleman and Elijah Herbel taking you through a Friday here on Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcast is part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
It's Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman filling in for Chris Schmidt today as we go through the top Husker topics for the week and really get Bill Doleman's take on each of them. As we just heard from Derek Peterson, a former writer for Hail Varsity Magazine, still does the podcast, the Hail Varsity Club, now a writer for Saturdays Out West. It's a subsidiary of Saturdays Down South. As Derek's good stuff, we always love talking to Derek. It's been way too long since we last got to talk to Derek, so got a 2-segmenter with Derek this hour, and it's always good to get caught up with Derek. If you missed that, check it out. It's going to be posted up shortly, ESPNLincoln.com, or the Twitter or Facebook pages. You can check it out there as well. As Bill, you blink, and we're getting to the end of the show here, and I got to do it. Bill. We got to give a quick preview of the recruiting weekend, as This weekend isn't quite what Nebraska had in mind, as I believe they had 14 official visitors or 13 official visitors scheduled for this weekend, and about half of those guys ended up committing to a different school within the past 10 days. So Nebraska down to 7 official visitors, 3 of which are already commitments to Nebraska. Pop Watson, the quarterback from out in Massachusetts, as well as Creighton Prep offensive lineman Sam Sledge, and Florida defensive back Dwight Boodle, the little brother of former Husker DiCaprio Boodle. So those are the 3 commitments that are looking to do some peer recruiting this weekend and get their official visit out of the way, as they're going to be in town. A couple other names to let you know about. Taishan Wilson, he's a speedster defensive back from down in Texas, and we'll get back to that Texas facet in just a second. Ryan Robinson from Louisiana, he's from Edna Carr High School, and he is being recruited mainly by Mickey Joseph, that Louisiana connection, huge. Hayden Moore is a Colorado native, Bill, so I'm not sure if you know anything about him. 22 official offers, and he visited Iowa State last weekend, going to be in town for the Friday Night Lights camp as well as official visit weekend. He's at the inside linebacker spot, and he is going to be a name to watch. But, Bill, I want to get back to this Texas topic here, because as I told you, Nebraska bringing in Taishan Wilson from down in Texas. They already picked up a commitment from a Texan earlier this week in Riley Van Poppel, son of a former MLB pitcher, and a big commitment, the first from Texas for Nebraska in this class. And Nebraska's been consistent since joining the Big 12 that they'll get 1 or 2 guys from Texas every single class, but it doesn't resemble anything close to the work that Bo Pelini and even before that Callahan was putting in down in Texas. So I want to get your take on the Texas to Nebraska pipeline. Is it coincidence that as soon as the Texas to Nebraska pipeline seemed to dry up slightly, that the talent and the results here at Nebraska diminished? That's what some national recruiting analysts would tell you, that Nebraska has struggled to really find a place where they can go dive in and get a pipeline since they've joined the Big Ten. So I want to get your take on that. I mean, we know that the talent in and around Nebraska can be slept on by some national media sources, but I just don't want to ask, is there enough talent? We know there is enough talent. We saw that back in the late 80s and the 90s. Nebraska was putting talent from around the area into good spots and getting them into the NFL. But how important do you think this Texas pipeline is or could be for Nebraska if they were to reestablish some semblance of that?
Well, it's critical to have connections anywhere there is a talent base, and not just Texas, but if you can get them in California, if you can get them in Florida. Nebraska's done a nice job in Georgia. Is Nebraska's slide, does that parallel the lack of Texans on the roster? We won the 1997 national championship with 9 of 11 starters on offense from the state of Nebraska. Okay? You got to find players that fit the system that you want to play. Nebraska really didn't have a consistent system for 2 decades. We're hoping that with some stability with Scott that starts to change a little bit. You get coaches that have connections. Mickey obviously has great connections in Louisiana and probably East Texas and all the way down south. Brian Applewhite coming in with what he's been able to do with, flipping some guys from TCU or other Texas schools, sure, it's significant. But it's not like every recruiting class that Nebraska had from 1970 to 2000 was made up of 23 guys from Texas. You got Texans that fit, and some of the guys that we brought up from Texas weren't highly, recruited. Some were, but, Aaron Taylor wasn't highly recruited, and he becomes one of the great offensive linemen in college football history, and All-American at 2 different positions. You can find gems all over the country if you work hard and you bring them in and you establish, a pipeline. But yeah, Texas is important, and then Texas and A&M, and no matter how much you're going to pay them, Houston, they're not going to get everybody. But if you can get a couple and you develop some relationships, sure, you're going to bring in a couple of guys that complement the program the way you want the program to go. So, kudos for them to get Mathis and a couple of these other guys, the names you're mentioning that are coming in to visit. Again, it's a national brand. And Nebraska's proving that with the classes that they're putting in and where these guys are coming in and visiting from. Massachusetts and Georgia and Kansas City and, Lincoln, Omaha, Creighton Prep. It's to me, it just seems like it's typical Nebraska recruiting. They'll go find them wherever they are and try to get them to come in and play.
In your opinion, we only got about 90 seconds left this segment, but in your opinion, is the take that Nebraska's struggled since they joined the Big Ten because they had to change how they recruited? Is that too simplistic of an answer for Nebraska's struggles?
Maybe, maybe. And maybe that's been used against Nebraska, by coaches down south, that if you go there, nobody's going to see you play because you're going to be in the Big Ten. Well, the Big Ten's probably putting more people in the NFL, so that's a draw for Nebraska now. But yeah, that's probably been used against them by coaches down there. I'm sure it's not for lack of trying, but again, Nebraska has not had consistency in coaching, head coaches, assistant coaches. They need some longevity like they had back in the day. And once you got guys who are on the program for 4 and 5 and 6 and 15, Charlie McBride years, 20 years, George Arlington for 30, whatever, then those relationships develop and the flow of the players gets a little bit easier.
It's Bill Doleman joining us here on Friday. It's Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery, wrapping up this show here as that's a big recruiting weekend for Nebraska, as the past couple weekends have been. I believe we'll be getting caught up with Greg Smith on a Tuesday. No Monday show next week, but Greg Smith, I believe, going to be joining us next Tuesday to recap the recruiting weekend. We'll see if Nebraska gets any commitments from this recruiting weekend, and you can follow all of Greg's work on Twitter, recruiting extraordinaire, at Greg Smith HV. One last thought here from Bill before we hit the commercial break.
You're also recruiting for the transfer portal. If they're not happy this time around, you never know when you can revisit them again.
It's a great point. It's a great point. We'll wrap up a Friday edition of Hail Varsity Radio coming up after the break, and then following that, we'll get you into some Lincoln Salt Dogs baseball. That's all coming up here in a little bit. ESPN Lincoln for our local listeners. It's Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcasts are just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor. I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all of the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Elijah Herbel and Bill Doleman filling in for Chris Schmidt one last time here on Hail Varsity Radio as we get you set for your weekend. Saturday morning edition coming your way 7 to 9 a.m. tomorrow. And if you missed anything on this show today, make sure you check it out in podcast form. That's Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Hail Varsity YouTube page. Really, wherever you like to get your podcasts is where you can find Hail Varsity Radio. And if you're listening from across the state, it's a great way to get the Saturday morning show as well as it's for our local listeners here on ESPN Lincoln. But we'll have good stuff as Brandon Vogel joins the show tomorrow, as well as Gary Sharp. And I believe we'll have a sighting of Mark Kranak as well as Chris Schmidt checks in from Denver. And anyone is heading out to Denver this weekend. Schmitty is in the beautiful city of Denver. My dad just texted me. He just arrived in Denver as he's going out to visit some family. I'm stuck here in Lincoln. So, Bill, you're giving me the look here on our stream. It's, I wish I was in Denver this weekend, too.
All the cool kids are here. And if those folks want to come over and help me move some furniture around, I got a new bedroom set I need to put upstairs. So that'd be much appreciated.
Well,
Schmitty.
And Schmitty was telling me how I'm gonna find a way to get into that Stanley Cup Finals game, and I'm like, good luck with that. I've been looking at ticket prices, and that's why one of the reasons I'm glad I'm not in Denver this weekend is because it would have pained me to be in Denver while the Stanley Cup Finals were in town, and I would have been unable to go because of ticket prices. But that's the way she goes. So I'm stuck here in the capital city, and I'm just gonna try to stay cool this weekend as we got that heat advisory in effect, as you just heard there in the commercial break. Over 100 degrees the next couple days, and I got 5 baseball games I got to umpire this weekend, so I am already hydrating.
You know, it's awful warm out here, but as I've often mentioned, the weather where you are is not conducive to going out and umpiring 5 games on Saturday afternoon. Does not sound like a lot of fun. But you are right about the ticket prices. I've heard thousands and thousands of dollars, and that was for game 1. And after they won game 1, that's like doubled to be ice level and just to be in the building. And I can't even, it's tens of thousands, I think, to get ice level, to get into, what is it, Ball Arena, McNichols Coliseum.
Well, I mean, this has been a trend that we've seen since COVID with ticket prices just spiking. Remember the Super Bowl this year, the crazy ticket prices, Stanley Cup Finals, the NBA Finals were pretty expensive. And there was a poll out this week from, I don't think it was from Gallup, but it was from one of the major pollsters. And people that want to get out and see a concert this summer are expecting to pay more, and they're expecting, not just willing, expecting to pay over $100 a seat. And most people expecting to pay up to $500 a seat to sit where they want to sit just for concerts. So it's getting ridiculous. I'm getting priced out of being able to go to live events, but thank God I work in radio and I can dirty my way into some free tickets sometimes.
Yeah, I did see something yesterday, a meme, and I don't know, it wasn't a meme, it was a poll that said Nebraska is number 1 in fans consuming alcoholic adult beverages. Did you see that?
I did not.
So, if you're going to go to an event anywhere, I guess there is no place like Nebraska. That the average beer consumption is higher at Nebraska than anywhere else, and that's without having them being sold in the stadium. So, again, Nebraska fans might pay a lot of money, but they also have a good time while they're doing it.
Insert a joke here.
Number one.
Insert a joke here about needing beer to watch the Husker football team with the results over the past couple years. But, Bill, appreciate the time today on a Friday. You have yourself a lovely weekend. Stay cool, and we'll talk to you next week. All right, bud?
Always good to be with you. See you.
A Hurrdat Media Production.